everybody, thank you so much for joining us here at this wonderful BAFTA Q&A of the Sky original that you can watch on Sky Atlantic and Sky Now on the 27th of August from 9 p.m. 2 episodes, and then it will all be available as well to watch. I've been lucky enough to watch 2 episodes, which is brilliant to be able to chat to this wonderful panel about. So without further ado, please welcome Lucy Prebble, the series writer, co-creator and executive producer. Over this. Billie Piper plays Suzy Pickles, co-creator and executive producer. Leila Farzad, who plays Naomi, Suzy's manager and best friend. So much to talk about. And Daniel Ings, who plays Cobb, Suzy's husband. Georgi Banks-Davies, the director. Andrea Dewsbery, producer. And myself. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Edith.
Hi, Edith.
Hi, Edith.
We will give you guys as well who are joining us the chance to ask some questions. I'm going to selfishly dive in first and ask all the questions I want to ask, and you can put yours in the Q&A section. I'll get through as many of those as I possibly can as well. Lucy, where and how did this idea start? I believe it was quite a while ago. The conversations or the seeds of this character and this story started.
Yeah, it was probably about 5 years ago now, at least I think. And Billie and I were having a drink somewhere, which isn't unusual, and had a conversation about something or other in life, I think, something that was going on in one of our lives. And I remember it was probably the first time that Billie said to me, you know, we should try and make a TV show again, because we had worked together originally in a show called Secret Diary of a Call Girl many, many years ago. And when we were both much, much younger, and we were having this conversation as friends, and we started to sort of think in a very casual way, what would it be if we were going to do that? And it took quite a long time from that point to come up with what eventually became I Hate Suzy. Like, I wrote quite a few versions of a first episode that were really different from what it's ended up being. That was actually more of a sort of friendship sitcom, actually, originally in the very, very early days between two women. And then, but I kept having this pervasive feeling of sort of, so what? Like, so what's the thing? What's the thing? Because I like something quite big and meaty and dramatic to sort of get my teeth into. And eventually, I was sort of thinking and chatting about never having actually found out what happened in the case of a lot of the women who had their iClouds hacked, if you remember, back a number of years ago. It was huge, and it was really devastating and massive and upsetting, and yet nothing sort of consequentially seemed to be in the news after that, which I always found really sort of surprising. And I don't just mean criminally necessarily, I mean more sort of emotionally and professionally, actually, in terms of them talking about it. It felt like it all had to go underground in a sort of terrible state of shame. And so I started to think, well, what would that be like if your whole life was kind of exploded through these images? And that's kind of where the idea originally came from.
Billie, why did you want to, first of all, how did you find creating Suzy? Because, you know, we start this series, and the clever and brilliant thing that you've done is each episode is almost an emotion or a reaction to her experience, but it kind of very much feels that she doesn't really know who she is herself in a way. And was that an exciting opportunity to create a character like that almost she's on a journey of discovery throughout this entire series?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the hack was a great way to unmask this woman and this character, and certainly chimed with a lot of conversations that Lucy and I had been having about your late 20s, early 30s being this sort of rude awakening, and how quite often, and it's certainly conversations I've had amongst my friends, you sort of a common theme seems to be, I don't know who I really am. I don't know. I feel like I should be more established at this point, or I am sort of established in the eyes of the world, and actually I don't want any of that, and I am constantly trying to appeal to people, but who am I? And this was a great way, the hack was a great device in terms of exposing a woman and what it is we sort of go through from birth until, you know, late 20s, early 30s, which feels also like something we don't talk a great deal about. So we talk a great deal about our 20s. But then...
Oh, Billy's frozen.
Absolutely. That gives a lot, you know, that gives us a lot to sort of play with. And yeah, this awful, incriminating thing happens, but it sort of, it helps her find herself ultimately.
So where do we explain to people who maybe haven't seen it yet, where we find Susie Pickles at the start of this series?
Well, Luce?
So the show basically opens with her life, which is living with her lovely, handsome husband, Cobb, played by Dan Ings, who's kind enough to be here today. And
very handsome.
Yeah, very handsome. And basically she seems to have this pretty good life, ostensibly. She has a very close friend who is also her manager, Naomi Jones, played by the beautiful Leila. So I have to say beautiful,
very attractive.
Beautiful, but now I'm like, oh no,
we're going to run out.
That's all that matters to us.
Exactly. Aesthetically, this is what people are like in the show. No, everything seems to be fine, and in fact, she gets this bit of good news at the beginning of episode 1, which is she's going to play a Disney princess in a new movie. And she can't quite believe it. She thought her career was on the skids. Anyway, and then throughout the course of episode 1, it becomes clear that something else has happened, which is a mass leak of stolen images in which she's included, which is going to affect every area of her life. And the episodes basically roll through the different areas of her life that it affects in hopefully unexpected and interesting ways that you might not necessarily assume, emotionally and professionally particularly. And each of the episodes, and Georgie, the director, can speak quite a lot to this, I think, because this was one of the great things that she brought to the show, which was the way of visualizing how each of the episodes should feel different, because they're each stages that Suzy goes through in dealing with this kind of violation and trauma and exposure.
Yeah, I think in episode 1 as well, she's sort of hysterically holding everything together, and that we very quickly learn, that she's, I would say, kind of quite on the edge, and then this thing happens and it totally blows everything apart, and that's that's satisfying, hopefully to watch, but certainly to play.
That closing scene in episode 1 is amazing. I sing it for a reason, obviously. That is just, it's so good. It totally surprises you, and I think that's something that's brilliant about shows, that there's an incredible emotional truth to it, but you never quite know where it's of what it's going to bring you as a production, about, I guess, your reaction to the story and how you wanted to kind of represent it visually.
Sorry, Edith, was that to me? You slightly broke up.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, George, you
Okay.
just wanted to try and get an idea of kind of how you reacted to the script and how you saw that kind of representation visually and trying to really bring it to life.
Well, Lucy writes sort of incredibly in depth. So I really remember once our AD had put a schedule together for a date, and he was like, "It's just one scene," and I was like, "Have you read it?" It's 5 scenes, mate, in one. It's kind of the best way to describe it, in that it's so layered. And so when you just read the source material, it's like you read it once as a director, and then you read it again, and you read between the lines, and then again and again. And she has a beautiful tapestry in the way that she writes like that, and which is. It's such a great starting point, and I think, like Lucy said, it's very exciting to look at something where you can play with every episode in a different way and emotionally in a different way. So it kind of started there, really. I was like, I just looked at lots and lots of reference and thought, okay, we've got 2 tasks here, which felt quite unusual. One is like, what's the look and the style of the show? And secondary, it's like, what's the look and style of every episode? So what's the glue that holds us together? And of course, you know, that's also Billie and Leila and Dan and Nat and all the great actors who hold the characters through the through line. But then visually, like, how do we play and how do we explore? But I had one very simple rule, and that was that we are always in Susie's perspective. And that can be literally or it can be emotionally, but that we never ever are allowed behind her or in front of her as an audience, because you have to live this emotionally. And as soon as I sort of made that rule, if you like, everything became easier. And it means also that you can be really experimental, you can be fantastical, you can kind of go anywhere you want to go if legitimately the character goes there. And you've seen the second episode, I mean...
Oh yeah, there's one particular scene that it's...
They told me not to swear, but you know, she's pretty fucked up, and it's like, just caveat. And in the like physical, there's a lot of drink and drugs involved, and it's like, so again, as a director, you're like, okay, well, I'm in this character's perspective, so I'm in her perspective. And you get to sort of use all the tools and all the filmmaking kind of like playfulness to really project that. So it's a really unique project like that. I mean, it's like a dream project as a director.
And I think that all those elements as well really kind of really get to the depth of her kind of, you know, her despair almost at times as well. You know, the kind of the almost kind of fantastical elements of it kind of really heighten how you see her emotionally, I think, as a viewer, for sure. Yeah,
totally. And we don't just, you know, beyond episode 2, I'd like to think it will continually surprise the audience, because if you ever think you've got a hold of it, it hopefully will just spin you 180 again. Yeah. And we just got to play in so many different genres. So I'm excited, Dina, for when you watch past episode 2.
Yeah. Leila and Naomi in episode 2, we learned quite a lot about Naomi in episode 2. But what you do discover is that these 2 characters are kind of, you know, they've been friends for a very long time. They've been through a lot together. Was that a nice thing to talk to me if you and Billie kind of talked about that and worked on that in terms of talking about kind of what went on before we find them, you know, in terms of how that brings us to where they are now?
I think female friendship is not like really examined very much, and how if you've been friends with someone since you were very little, you sort of get stuck and there's not much room for you to evolve as people. And so there's a lot of love between these 2 women, but I think sometimes they don't like each other, and that's quite unpalatable for most people. I don't know, there's the friendship is very interesting. It's codependent, and Naomi sort of lives for Suzy, which is an act of love, but also slightly self-effacing. So it's very confused. And Suzy does love Naomi, but it's new. It's very layered.
What was your reaction when you first read the script?
Oh my God, I want to be in this. When I first read it. Yeah, excited and just recognizing it. I was like, yes, finally, it's ugly and it's flawed and it's grotesque at points, and that's just what we're like. And people just want to polish everything up and make everything neat, and it's such a relief to read something that's both clever and true. So yes, I was very excited when I read it.
Dan, can we talk a little bit about Cobb? How would you describe him?
He is a very repressed man. He's in this marriage which he needs and which he relies on, and I think he's managed to sort of convince himself that he is in charge of the situation, I think, and particularly on a sort of emotional level. And I guess Suzy and Cobb have sort of boxed themselves into this place where their marriage is in some ways quite comfortable, in that the issues between them are never addressed. And I guess throughout the course of the series, you know, it seems at first that he's quite a sort of doting parent and husband, and I guess as the series goes on, you realise that that's not that's not the whole story. There's a lot of anger there, and there's a lot of resentment, I think, that he feels like I think there's this kind of seething resentment that he's already been emasculated by the fact that his wife is so much more successful than him, that she's the breadwinner. And so I suppose when this kind of, what he sees is like an injury to him through the phone hacking, when that happens, I think that brings up a lot of latent rage, misanthropy. Is that right word?
Yeah, it's the quiet bubbling that you even get kind of in up, between episode 2. It's just simmering, and you're like, oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, the simmeringness of it is largely due to the fact that Georgie's a good director and Lucy's a good writer. My instinct was always to sort of push the rage because it was so fun, and I think what Georgie did so cleverly was kind of make sure that was sort of held in and withheld, and that you get glimpses of it and more as it goes on. Yeah.
Andrea, in terms of producing a show like this, what are the biggest challenges? Because as Georgie was saying, kind of each episode has its own kind of sort of, not aesthetic, but it's got its kind of own uniqueness in a way. Is that a kind of joy as a producer in terms of the challenges that throws up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the show's really interesting because although it's a very intimate story, it's very ambitious in terms of the sheer amount of locations and cast. And then you meet a director like Georgie who comes in and goes, it's already ambitious, but what I want to do on top of that is basically make a series that also contains an element almost of individual films, but that all still hold together like this beautiful series. So yeah, it's a real joy. It's a challenge, but you go, oh yeah, this is going to be great.
Mm-hmm. When you have something that is kind of really sort of direct and honest, and you have a channel involved and you have a production company involved as well, it feels like watching it that you were really allowed to make the show that you wanted to make. In terms of, is that an easy thing to achieve at the minute? And were you able to make the show that you wanted to make?
Yes, I think Sky and Bad Wolf, everyone understood what was so special about this project. Everyone understood that the collaboration between Lucy and Billie was just the heart of it and the heart of everything. And that was always kind of the thing we always returned to. And we were really lucky that we had Billie and Lucy on set with us the whole time. So yeah, we've all been asked about, was it difficult to get this past the channel or that past the channel? And actually, we didn't really have those sort of conversations. Obviously, everything went through compliance as it always does, but everyone was so on the same page. Actually, it's a very dull answer, but actually we were very supported, I think.
Yeah, and that's really unusual, I think, in my experience anyway. I mean, there are obviously exceptions to that, and you think about some of the big streamers and stuff who sort of pride themselves on saying, here's the money, go away and make what you want to make. But I don't know how true that is, firstly. And secondly, that's really difficult to do in this country where there's so little money comparatively, and there's so little sort of time, and we're under different sorts of stresses and pressures. So it was pretty great. There were suggestions and there were sometimes, thoughts, but I felt pretty much for the first time in my career on screen, I think, that there was a sort of understanding that we were going to be able to make the show that we wanted to make, because actually originally we'd come and said, here's what the show is, I think. And it hadn't been one of those processes where you spend ages and ages, like in rooms having meetings, trying to sort of convince each other you've got the same vision, because we had sort of written some of it before and then sort of gave it and said, here's what we sort of think it is. And that makes a huge difference. But yeah, kudos to Sky for allowing that and doing that. And I think that actually industry-wise, it's quite a good move, because I feel like one of the great advantages of getting artists to work here rather than going to those big streamers is going to be saying creatively, if we're not going to spend that massive amount of money, we're going to actually offer you creative powers and control and sort of stuff like that. And I feel very grateful for that.
Billie, I wanted to ask you as well, because I think that there's such a brilliant honesty that you can see in the portrayal of the character, and whether, you know, she's obviously someone who's in the public eye, and she's someone who's been in the public eye for a young age, but you can also, you know, just look at her on a human level sort of thing as well. But I think that one of the things that's brilliant is peeling back that kind of veneer of celebrity in a way, you know, in terms of showing her as a mother to a you know, a young boy who is deaf, and you know, and having, you know, not everything being right. And was it important for you to have the chance to kind of do that in a way, you know, being someone who's been in the public eye from a young age? And, you know, there's nothing, you know, biographical about this, but I imagine quite a lot of your experience is kind of poured into so much of this show.
Yeah, I think it's just, for me as an actor, it's just important that women are represented on screen, whether they're playing a famous person or just, you know, or a mother or someone, whatever it is. It really spins me out when that is done inauthentically. I really passionately hate it, and I feel it's such a wasted moment. And so for me, just the quest to constantly drive through to something that feels, you know, at times horribly honest, and, you know, potentially very exposing. But I think, you know, both Lucy and I think share this sort of quest, which is we want people to be able to relate to it. And I think one of our concerns at the beginning was, we're drawing from a famous person's life, but actually on some level nowadays we all have something to lose, because we all have we have this now public profile, just by being on social media. Really, I think everything, you know, anything could be incriminating on some level. And it was important that for us, that when people watch that, it's not distancing as an experience, that it's something that they can relate to. So certainly all the emotional stuff was really, you know, integral. And
I think one of the things that we'd often ask each other at the beginning of the process was, what do you see, what do you experience a lot in life, but you never see it on television? And that's often a place that I find very fruitful to write from. And I remember there's this moment in the last episode of the show where she's quite unpleasant to her son. And I remember standing round the monitor when we were filming it, and somebody going, "Oh God, that's horrible." And I sort of said, "Oh, is that what your experience of that is?" And she said, "Yeah."
And I said, "No, it's fine."
You said, "Yeah, it's fine." But the other mothers around the monitor, when I said, "Yeah, but have you ever? So you're saying you never would talk like that to your son?" And they went, "Oh no, yeah, I do all the time. I just mean it's horrible on screen." And it's moments like that where you go, "Oh, brilliant! Then this is what we want," because you've got all these people going, "Oh yeah, at least once a week, but not on television." And that's the moment I'm interested in.
That's so true. There are, yeah, absolutely. I think that's about the whole thing about the emotional truth that you get from the show, to be honest. Lucy, was it important for you to be kind of, you know, were you there whilst the whole thing was being filmed, sort of thing? Is that
Yeah, but I'm a controlling nightmare. I mean, I'm constantly there. Like no,
every moment,
every day. Bill, just a little bit down. I'm like,
Bill, bring it up.
I feel like that was a note to me, Lucy.
No, I mean, yes, I am, and no, I can't excuse it. But you know, it's how you know. I don't know. I just worked really hard on it, and I didn't want them to party without me.
You didn't want to miss out on the fun, did you? That's the thing.
That's it. Do you know how boring writing is compared to that? It's so boring.
Was there a kind of encouragement to, or did you have this to the time and space to improvise on set or to kind of play with scenes? And Georgie, was that something that you were interested in looking into or not?
I love it. I mean, I've sort of got an ethos with actors, which is like, let them own the character, you know, and then I want to guide them through the world, but I don't want to tell them who they are. Like, let them really own it. And Billie's like a masterclass at that. I learned so much from her because that's a general MO, you know. And I think so. Then, yes and no. You know, it was always, Lucy was always there, so we talked about those things. There's certain scenes where it would spin off. I mean, I think all of the actors hate me because I never say cut, and I'm just forcing them to. At the end of every take, there's always something brilliant because they just have to keep going. Billie, I remember once when you were like, I can see you like, she's gonna fucking say it. Yeah. I was like, cut. And she's like, thank God. There's only so much improving I can do. But what it does is it like allows this sort of like beautiful. I'm always looking for like the kind of extra and just letting them really building a space. So however technical we get and however orchestrated something gets, what I always want to do is make sure that the actors don't feel that and that they have the ultimate freedom to just really like play. And I don't mind if it's different every time. In fact, I encourage that. It's like focus pullers hate me because I won't allow marks to go down. I don't want to block it. But within that, there's a really grand master plan. And I think improv sort of played in and out of that. It had to work for the episode. So episode 6, for example, which is guilt and is based upon, for me, stylistically and kind of much more of a social realism vibe, it plays a little bit more with the day players in terms of improv. So yes, to a certain extent where it was right, but it always came back down to the central. I mean, Lucy Prebble wrote the show. You don't like the words are always brilliant, and then we explored beyond that a little bit here and there.
That photo shoot in the first episode is an extraordinary piece of film. It's just, you know, and those shots of your face, Billie, in terms of you just see. It's so emotional. It's so hard to watch, but you can't not watch it because it's so great. Congratulations on that alone, because I just thought it was extraordinary.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, talk about Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you actually went to Comic-Con, is this right?
Yeah, we went to the I forget the official name of it now, but the London Comic-Con, and we took over a space, and we had our own setup with our own big poster in the background of Quo Vadis and our own audience and our own strange sci-fi costumes and our own host. Lucy was beside herself.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a sci-fi fan, so I was there going like, this is the show I want to make, this pretend show that we've done all this design for with Billie's massive face on, and that's not true, but it's partly true. And it was that was really fun, and we also had a lot of fun. I think Leila was in when we did that scene in the hotel room. We got an actual hotel, obviously, to do it in, but you know, the idea being that it was attached to Comic-Con, and I think that was one of our finest hours, actually, that whole section. I don't know what that was, and sorry.
It's like 101 Dalmatians.
So it was really, really, really fun to do. I think it was quite fun to act as well. Am I wrong in that?
The hotel room was a lot of fun. I had a great time.
Dexter Fletcher. Oh my God.
So good.
Oh my God. So when he came on, I was like, yes.
So good.
Yeah, it's good. Brilliant casting as well for that. Was that a fun side to it as well, in terms of, because I've only seen the first two sort of thing, but I mean, even like that little moment was just brilliant. Were you writing specifically with people in mind for things? Were you thinking about, little characters that were in there? Even like the camera crew, doing the photo shoot and stuff, that was just perfectly pitched.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously some of that's writing, some of that is performance, and a lot of it's direction as well, which is you make sure that every single person that comes on the screen at any moment has a very full life. And you know, I always love actors who will come on and go, here's the story of this person that you see for 15 seconds, by the way, just in case you're interested, that I've come up with, and they've brought it to set. And that sometimes happens, and that's always really, you know, actually sounds like a wanky thing to say, but sort of humbling in a way, because as a writer, what you realise is you sort of wanted them there for this plot point, and they've actually done a load of work that really elevates it. And I'm always grateful for that, because frankly, it makes everyone look better.
Well, listen, we've got loads of questions that are coming in as well from people, so I want to get through as many as we can. We've got one from Liam, who says, this is a great one actually. What was it like working with BSL translator Brian Duffy on the deaf character of Frank, Susie's son, and why did you decide to include a deaf character in the series?
Sure. Well, obviously Frank was written as deaf. I was interested in the fact that they had a kid together, Cobb and Suzy. I thought it made the marriage more interesting, and also it made the dynamic of her being an actress and a mother. It was another role for her to play, essentially, and to get wrong, as well as right. And I sort of just wanted to make that as interesting as possible. And also, again, it was that question of what do you see a lot of in life, but you never see done on screen in a particular way. And I was interested in seeing somebody who was deaf on screen done in a way that, because I have a friend of mine who is deaf, and she's just always very, very funny about what it is that's funny about being deaf, you know, and the things she gets away with as a result of it and things like that. And I was like, well, that you never really see. Could he be quite a naughty boy, you know, and that, or this, that, on the other. And anyway, so it was just a way of being inspired by putting something on screen. It was actually Dan who did a lot of the work with sign language and stuff like that, because we decided that Cobb maybe was better at that. I don't know if you want to talk about working on that, Dan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Lucy decided that Cobb would be more proficient at sign language, and it was this interesting thing where it was like, in a way, it became like a stick to sort of beat Suzy with, that he could communicate with his son in a way that she couldn't, you know. And I think so he committed to that in this incredible way for all of his flaws. So I worked with Brian Duffy for about 6 weeks, I want to say, maybe like 2 or 3 times a week. And we became good pals. He was on set throughout the shoot as well. And it was, you know, it's always just like a joy to be able to sort of dive into something extra. Like that's one of the coolest things I think about being an actor, is when you get to like learn an instrument or learn a bit of a language. Like obviously I didn't have enough time to learn the whole of BSL, which would have been awesome. But particularly because Lucy Prebble is always rewriting. But so we had to figure out some of that on the fly. But it was wicked, you know. It was interesting talking to Duffy about, he was saying that it's rare for parents of a deaf child to be able to speak sign language properly. And so the example he gave was that like his own parents don't really speak like sign language. They have their own kind of like signs and symbols for things. That basically mean nothing or mean something completely else in BSL. So it was interesting to be able to portray a character in that way that like maybe isn't, is kind of rare. And there was a responsibility there, I think. I don't know if you felt this as well, Bill. There's a responsibility there to get it right, do you know what I mean? And to not, what I didn't want to do was to be like supposedly doing brilliant sign language in the show, and for people to watch it afterwards and be like, that guy's talking gibberish. So there was a bit of a responsibility there, but we committed to it, and I hope that it's all right.
We've got another question. If you are putting questions in, just put your name in, even one name. You can make up a name if you want. Anonymous attendee is really dull. This is from an anonymous attendee. It says, will there continue to be musical numbers throughout? It gives it a unique and surprising feel. Was that an idea that came early on? Thank you, Anonymous.
I think Lucy and I are destined to do a musical together, because we're both sort of obsessed with them, some of the more obscure ones. And I'm always clucking to sort of sing and dance on screen. So I often ask Lucy to you know, can I dance in this scene and this scene and this?
And I just obey her because apparently I have no will of my own. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do, you know, although that is actually quite an inspiring thing. You know, when an actor sort of says to you, listen, I really, really want to do this thing, it's quite a fun game in your head to go, well, how could I possibly do that? How could that happen? And at least it gives you something to aim towards. But yeah, I'm afraid that the truthful and disappointing answer is that no, there are not loads and loads of song and dance numbers throughout. But what I would say is that each episode has an element that is as extraordinary and bizarre and fantastical. It's just that changes depending on what the emotion of the episode is. Is that fair, Georgie?
Yeah, totally. And we're not going to give it away. You're just going to have to wait and see.
I'm looking forward to I Still Hate Susie the musical. This is another anonymous attendee. Lucy, aside from Billie, were you writing with particular actors in mind? Can you talk a little bit about the casting process?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I wasn't writing with particular actors in mind. I'm trying to think back. I was thinking of the character mostly. I remember Dan jumped out immediately. Like Dan, when we met Dan and we watched I watched a video first where he was kind enough to do a reading of the scene, and immediately I thought this person is not commenting on the character in the way that sometimes it's easy to do. I think sometimes when you write men in shows about women or that just happen to have women in them, you know, there can sometimes be this tendency to go, okay, so is he this terrible villain monster that we sort of going to laugh at, or is he this sort of very, very nice guy that everyone, you know, sort of loves but sort of gets shat on? And there often is a kind of broad sitcom thing that goes on with the casting and the writing of men in that. And what I wanted to try and do, although obviously I'm always, you know, a woman trying to write a man, I was trying to write a guy who was difficult in a lot of ways, but wasn't totally unlikable, and actually who you could understand a lot of his aspects. I don't know what you think, Dan, but I think there are occasions with Cobb where I'm like quite on his side, actually, even though I think he has issues with how he expresses himself and anger particularly. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going through stuff as well, and loads of the emotions that he's feeling are totally legitimate. I think his behaviour is pretty reprehensible at points, but he's not an out-and-out bad guy. And I do think, yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that about the fact that if you flip it and you look at how so many male writers write female characters, and, you know, this is a pretty obvious comment, but they're so often incredibly two-dimensional, and I think that it's, yeah, it's so interesting to see that, like, once you have women getting the opportunity to write these shows, that the male characters, the same is not true the other way around. Do you know what I mean? And I think,
that's nice of you to say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to because you're here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, but you know, that's what drew me to it. It's such a complex character, and I yeah, and I think that needs to be the case more often.
No, that's really nice, because you never know. That's honestly what I meant, is because you don't know, because you can never be that. You know, you never quite know. I remember the first time I saw the Adam Driver character on Girls, I was like, oh my God, it's a man written by a woman. Like, it was the first time I remember going, I know who that guy is. And it's not that men have been writing men brilliantly for centuries, but that was the first time I sort of recognised a woman's take on a man that was different from what I'd seen before, because it was through her eyes. Yeah. And anyway, I'd love Leila. Like, when Leila came in and did Naomi, it was very brilliant, because I have to be honest and say that there are elements of Naomi that have probably come a little bit from myself, a tiny bit. Like, there's an over cerebralness sometimes, a kind of like over reliance on the theoretical, a need to control, if you can imagine such a thing. And I think that must have been, you know, Leila's very smart. I must have realised that fairly early on. And I wonder what that was like.
Oh, Leila,
Sorry,
she's not.
sorry.
I thought she's
not
not
very kind.
answering. I'm off.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yes, she's fiercely bright like Lucy, and unflappable and in charge, and but also vulnerable and human and makes mistakes. So it was a challenge, and hopefully quite a recognizable person to see on screen, and a foil to Suzy in a way.
How did you come to be involved in the project? How did you first come to hear of it and get involved? Well,
I sent in a terrible tape first time round as an audition, and I was told that it was no good. So I sent in another tape, and because I thought, when I read Naomi, I was like, no, I know her, I can do her. Because as much as terrorist wife and all that sort of great stuff that I'd also been put up for was in my world, this was very exciting. And then eventually I met Billie, and then I met Lucy, and I guess something clicked, and I was sort of a real pinch yourself moment of going, oh my god, I can't believe it, because it was brave and mad and makes you question stuff, and it's just such a delight to be in it.
I think that was the hardest part to cast. I think Georgie, Lucy, we were in all of those castings. We were going round the houses with it. It's hard. It's a hard part, and it's hard to do again authentically sometimes, because it's I don't know. I basically, we met Leila at what felt like weeks and weeks of looking, and she came in, and she had all the cerebral wit and smarts and drive, but she has this dry sense of humor, which felt it was much what we wanted, because Lucy and I are very, also kept our eye on the fact that there is a version of this script, and it's not to do Lucy's writing at all, but there is a version of this script where people would come in, let's say, and play these characters very broadly, and so it would feel like we were in a sitcom. And as much as we love our sitcoms, we didn't want it to feel like that. We didn't want it to feel like a British sitcom. We wanted it to feel different, and so that's hard. That's hard to find, and Leila absolutely nailed that. And we got very excited because we were very tired at that point.
Yeah, it was like one of those moments where you're like, maybe there's something wrong with the character.
No, Lucy, no. I should play.
Shut up. Maybe I said that once, and then that was completely rejected. And then
Lucy, no offense, babe, but I don't want to direct you.
Yeah, no, quite right. And Leila came in, and it was like Christmas a little bit. It was like, thank God.
It was such a good
someone
day.
Someone can do that and that and that, and yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens really early, sometimes it happens really, really late, and you just sort of go, oh, thank God, because we don't have to reconceive the entire show.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, it's like with all of the cast, because we've got a big cast. It's like it was a long process, but when when Dan arrived, like Lucy said, when Leila arrived, it was just like, yes, it's brilliant actors who can like step up. But we're gonna make something, and it's going to be very special. So it was worth all the pain of the waiting. I mean, and we saw loads of brilliant actors. It was just, there was something very magical about these two, alongside Billie.
Rebecca Clark says, what do you hope the audience take away from the show? Tumbleweed.
Maybe a sense of relief, although I don't know. Maybe some relief that, I don't know, I feel like it would be nice if people walked away and went, I get that. It's not my life entirely moment to moment, but I get that, and that feels good, and also has a laugh, and also has a real that it's an experience for them, because we wanted it to feel like that. We wanted it to feel immersive, and Georgie does that so well, certainly in the first 2 episodes, it's like, you know, you're sort of feeling all the fabric, and I think that's I hope people experience that too.
And then Faye Watson says, is the series a contained story, or would you like to continue to explore it in a second series?
Well, we shall have to see. I mean, it depends. You know, I'd have to, I'd have to come up with something, and they'd have to want it, and people have to want it. So, you know, we'll see. But it's been a lot of fun, this one.
And then we've got this, just quickly, this is really just a quick pick up from an anonymous attendee on the improv. Leila, Daniel and Billie, how do you approach improv? Do you get much rehearsal time, and do you like it?
George,
go on, Leila. Go on, Leila.
Georgie and I and Dan, we had some improv sort of sessions before we started filming, where we got to do character work, which I found invaluable and brilliant. And that was before filming. And then there were little trigger words that she would just say to me, and it would get me back into the brain of Naomi, which I found brilliant and incredibly helpful. So that's one of the examples of improv that we had.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't do a huge amount of improvising on set, really. Like, the script is so tight, it's so tightly worded and tightly plotted. There wasn't a huge amount of room for that. But I guess in my head, there were maybe like 2 or 3 of the really emotional scenes between Cobb and Suzy. I remember like a few where it was just useful to not have to worry if you're really going to a dark place and something weird comes out. There's like a few that spring to mind, and you know, but it wasn't like improv so much as just like a weird little moment or something that may not have been scripted. But it's all, to be honest, I mean, I love improvising, but there wasn't, for me, there wasn't really improvising on this. It's all just like, it's all in the writing, man.
Listen, we've run out of time, and I just wanted to give the final question. Well, it's not even a question, but Tommy Jessup, who says, let's all keep dancing, which I really like the sentiment of. Perfect.
That's
yeah. Thank you so much to you all for taking the time to join us tonight. It's been so lovely to kind of just pick your brains about, you know, this series, which I think is fantastic. It's going to be available on Sky Atlantic and Now TV on the 27th of August, the Sky original I Hate Suzy. Thank you so much to our wonderful cast.
Thank you
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, guys. Thank you.
Bye.